Celebrating Black History. I'm Lisa Oligus, and this is Newsmakers. It is Black History Month, and in this edition of Newsmakers, we will look at the career and legacy of former Joplin police officer J.D. Love, who was recently recognized by the Joplin City Council. We will look at the many projects of Melissa Cuther, who helped create an integrated daycare in Joplin with the Newburger Community House in 1952, and was a driving force in establishing the George Washington Carver National Monument and Park, as well as the contributions of Marian Dial as principal of Lincoln School. And we'll talk with the park ranger about the Carver Monument and his legacy that lives on today. We will begin our discussion with Nanda Nunley, who is a member of the Mini Hackney Community Center, founder of the Langston Hughes Cultural Society, and president of the Black History of the Ozarks Preservation Society. Welcome, Nanda, and she's involved in unearthing Joplin's Black history every day. There seems to be more things coming to light. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a very busy month for you, so we want to begin with J.D. Love, whom we know had a career in law enforcement, but even before that, he may have been a boxer. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So J.D. Love's name as a boxer was Stormy Love, which I think that's great. But yeah, he started boxing in high school, and then he went to Joplin Junior College and continued his boxing there. Went on and fought some major bouts. We're just now really uncovering some of the newspaper articles that talk about his career, and it really is just amazing. Most of us know him as a police officer, but you know, to find out about his boxing career before that's really, really interesting.
And it is really neat to unearth that history. So you're finding it in maybe newspapers and other reports that way?
Yes. And some of his family members have donated some things for us to look at to kind of, highlight his career.
And we should mention that Mr. Love is still alive, and he was actually present. The City Council recently renamed a street for former Officer J.D. Love. We had video of the announcement, and Mr. Love spoke at that. Let's take a listen.
Well, I'm free all about 86 years. But, so hopefully, my high school speech teacher doubt if I could ever be a public speaker. And I had those doubts too. But hopefully I can convey what this means to me and my family, friends. I first joined the police department in 1965, and I thought the being a policeman was to catch bank robbers and thieves. So, but I found out it was more than that. And so I guess the police ethics is the citizens of the city is the job, not an interruption to the job. That's where I took it. And so, but of course I'm like anybody else. There's a lot of days in my life that I would like to forget. But this one day or evening I'll never forget. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Nanda, tell us why the naming of the street is significant. Why does it make an impact?
Well, I think it makes an impact in many ways, but number one, just for representation, the new street will be called J.D. Love Way. And Mr. Love's way in the community was, teaching respect, kindness, compassion, a lot of things that I think are just so very important for the community. But to know that this person made such an impact that the City Council would choose to have that name designation is really huge.
And he was one of the earliest Black members of the Joplin Police Force. Why was that significant in our community? I mean, you even had mentioned as an individual living in the city, why is it important to know that you are represented on the police force?
Yeah, well, again, yes, representation, knowing that there's police officers out there that look like you, that Mr. Love started his career with the Joplin Police Department in 1965, but
Wow.
he credits a previous police officer by the name of Lewis Bryant, who was the first Black police officer in Joplin, and Mr. Love credits him with his love for being in the force.
And how many years did he end up serving?
He ended up serving 28, almost 30 years of,
Wow.
yeah.
Do you feel like he inspired others to join the force?
Yes, I really do. I think there were several members of the community that grew up as little kids watching Officer Love, and then again that inspired them to get involved with the police force. So, yeah.
So, is he known for other accomplishments as well?
Yes, well, he went on to become the coroner. He served as coroner for Jasper County for several years, and later worked as a security guard at one of the hospitals in town. And anyone that will talk to you from there, just knows that he was just a very compassionate person, a very caring person. Mm-hmm. So I think probably the thing that people remember the most was that he cared. He cared about his community and the people within it.
Well, this isn't the only new recognition that you've been dealing with lately. So you've been very busy this month with a lot of the Black History Month events, and the proclamation of Langston Hughes Day was made recently. Tell us why February 1st was so significant.
Well, Langston Hughes was born on February 1st in 1901, and we know that he was born in Joplin, but now we know exactly where he was born. He was born at a residence that is no longer standing, but it was at 1046 South Joplin Avenue. His grandmother worked there as a domestic servant, and so whenever it came time for his mother, when it got close to time for his mother to deliver, his grandmother had her come and stay there. So that's where he was actually born, was at that residence. So it was really important to us that not only that every year we have been celebrating Langston Hughes Day with a little birthday celebration, but we wanted the city, we wanted that designation that this would be, February 1st would be Langston Hughes Day from here moving forward. So get ready, because next year it's going to be even bigger.
So you've learned all this about his birthplace. How does this impact possibly getting historic landmark designation for this place?
The land is owned by a private family here, and they are very, very kind and willing for us to, do some type of memorial, something that is that the community can celebrate, but also that would be respectful of their, land holding rights to the land. So it's, I just think that what we've got planned, it's going to be something that people will be able to see from the outside. It'll be on our Black History Heritage Trail that we have going so far in Joplin, but you'll be able to see it from the outside, and hopefully every once in a while we'll be able to open up that fence and have some poetry readings and spoken word events inside.
And I was part of one of those. We did one at Joplin Little Theater, a Night of Langston Hughes Poetry, which is exciting. Why is it important to do events like that? Because he was an artist, he was a creator. Why is it important to do things where it's spoken?
Yes. I think it's important to say his words. It's important for people to hear those words, to feel those words. Even just having little children to be able to hear those words and know that this person came from our town, came from Joplin. It's just important. It's an important honor on Langston Hughes, who his reputation is just huge.
Yeah, we mentioned poetry. He also wrote musicals. He plays. He's written a lot of things that people may not be aware of. You're going to actually then also be adding a display at the Joplin Historical Museum. Tell us about that project and what you hope to put in there.
Yes, so this exhibit will be called Uplifting Joplin. We are pulling in that word uplift from the Joplin Uplift that was written by A.G. Tutt and Fanny Tutt. So it will be a display that will be starting this month. And when I say starting, I mean this is not a finished product in any way. We are going to actually be asking the community to submit pictures, to submit knowledge, and in order to build this into something even larger. So we've already been conducting some interviews with local folks in the area, and we will be looking to do more interviews, getting all of that held, so that we actually have it to go back to at later times, but also to display during this.
It'll be a great thing to see.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Nada. We're going to be talking some more. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we look at the important role Melissa Cuther and Marion Dial played in education, integration, and the George Washington Carver National Monument. Welcome back to Newsmakers, where we're celebrating Black History Month as we explore prominent individuals who made a difference. In 1924, a Joplin businessman, Paul Ewart, donated 11 acres of land to be used expressly for a park for the Black community. At that time, it included a swimming pool, dance pavilion, and community center. Melissa Cuther was running the concession stand there, but would resign to pursue a bigger endeavor, which came to be known as the Newburger Community House, dedicated in 1952. We're joined again by Nanda Nunley to discuss Cuther's profound impact. Let's talk about this Newburger House, which would become an integrated daycare. So it was part of the park already. They kind of had to raise some money.
Right, they raised money. The Newburger family, the reason it's called the Newburger House is because the Newburger family, which included part of the Newman family,
Okay.
A white family in town. They had lost a son in the war, and this was something that they did in his honor.
Okay.
Donated money. But so Melissa Cuther was very adamant about making this happen. As you say, she gave up her other job to pursue another job. And what they did was they opened an integrated daycare, and it was an amazing thing to happen in 1952, 2 years before the Brown versus Board of Education, which desegregated schools, so way ahead of her time. One of the things that she said, if you don't mind my reading this, so in a 1952 leaflet, an introductory statement written by Ms. Cuther gave the school's purpose. The Carver Memorial School is more than a day nursery to keep children whose mothers are employed or for any other cause are unable to give the care and attention gained in group participation. It is a laboratory project of democracy where races and creeds practice working together, train daily in Christian living, and organize for supervised play. I think that is very important for her. She wanted to be ahead of her time.
She was.
She wanted to do something that she felt made a difference. And this made a huge difference in the lives of women. If you think back at that time, women who had to work weren't able to be home with their children. And, this was a way,
And some may have been widowed from the war because it wasn't that long after World War II. And they included some crippled children, as they worded it at the time, disabled children. But they were children of all races. And then the staff was mixed as well.
That's right.
So calling it a laboratory is an interesting way of phrasing it, but it seemed to work, right?
Yeah, it did. It did. For Mrs. Cuther, I think she had such a personality of being able to bring people together and people together for a cause. So she was a great leader in this laboratory experiment, as she called it. I attended this daycare whenever I was a little girl.
Did you really?
In Joplin, and then I went on the George Washington Carver Daycare, then moved to another building years later, and I taught there while I was going to college here.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Well, you had some articles that you provided us that showed that thousands of people attended the dedication of this school. It really was kind of a groundbreaking event. And then Cuther and her husband had once had a paper, a newspaper, way in her early days. Well, let's talk about her early days a little bit, because you said she even was sort of an entertainer and she's written a book.
Yes. Melissa Cuther was a singer, an amazing singer, and she also helped manage and sang with Blind Boone. Now, nowadays, most people have no idea who Blind Boone was, but he was kind of the Bruno Mars of his time.
Wow.
He was very, very much, people loved Blind Boone. He was known all over. He was
and he
blind.
went on tour.
Yes, he was blind, and he went on tour. He played the piano. He started really what we know as kind of ragtime. He was one of the early ragtime players, and so so she helped to manage him, but then also sang with him for many years.
And she's written a book.
Yes. She
her.
wrote a book called Blind Boone: His Early Life and His Achievements, and basically, you know, just goes through in beautiful language. I can't explain how beautiful her language is that she uses in the book. And just goes through and talks about his life and from his birth all the way up through the end of his life.
And she married C.W. Cuther here in Joplin, and they like I said, they had a newspaper called the Afro-American Leader for a short time. Why were they so civic-minded?
I can only think that they were civic-minded simply because the times called upon them to be. Mr. Cuther, people knew him as Sunshine. He was very well connected in the white community. Thomas Connor respected him tremendously and made sure that he always was a part of their gatherings, you know, serving in whatever way. But yeah, they were just, community was very important to them, and they wanted to do as much as they could to see this community thrive.
I read in one article that Cuther was president of the United Women with Minorities organization, which helped sponsor a marching band and Youth for Carver. So tell us a little bit about, she was big into the Carver birthplace.
Yes.
And really wanted to make that happen as a monument. And of course, that's was a tribute to calling it the Carver School, the Carver Nursery. They even apparently planned a little museum inside there. Yeah. Was that sort of the precursor of the monument? Tell us a little bit about her role in trying to advocate for the monument.
Yes, so before there was a George Washington and Carver National Monument, there was the Carver Birthplace Association, an organization that still is alive today. I'm a member of that now as well. But she started that. And that was the way that they advocated on behalf of forming the park. And so what started off as them having these small little celebrations and these small gatherings grew into what we know as a national park. I mean, that is amazing to me. Who can say that they helped to start a national park? But Melissa Cuther can say that.
One of the articles said she would bring people down to visit there, take tours of it, just to see his birthplace, and even from Kansas City. So she was quite the advocate, it sounds like.
Yes.
So, and then she was there and present when it was dedicated, which was just actually not long after the nursery was dedicated.
That's right. The early 50s were busy, busy years for Mrs. Cuther. She had year after year after year of just amazing feats that she helped to make happen.
So in many photos, she is right alongside Marion Dial, who also had passion for Mr. Carver. So tell us a little bit about Marion Dial and who he was and his accomplishments.
So Marion Dial, most people know him as the principal of Lincoln School. He started there at Lincoln in 1932. Melissa Cuther had taught at Lincoln School in the early 1900s, from 1905 I think to about 1912. So they knew each other on that level, but they also knew each other on the level of making sure that the Black community obtained some of the abilities for entertainment and education as the white community at that time. And so I believe that the reason you often see them together is they did work really closely together on a lot of different things.
You mentioned entertainment. I know that there would be different entertainers who would come through Joplin and play at Joplin Memorial Hall, but Mrs. Cuther tried to make arrangements for the Black community to see them because they may not have been welcome at the time.
Yes. So Fern Wilder, as people will recognize that name from Wilder's Restaurant. Fern Wilder was kind of in charge of booking those acts and things, arranging for those musical acts to perform at Memorial Hall. Her and Mrs. Cuther developed a very good friendship, and so whenever acts would come in, Mrs. Cuther would always make sure that the Black community was able to see them as well by having them play at Lincoln School.
So Lincoln School was really a nice source of all kinds of information and then entertainment as well. And then that band was part of representing you know, the youth of Carver. So thank you so much for sharing all this information. What do you hope people remember about these folks, and why is it so important that we chronicle their history?
Yeah, well, each one of them have different aspects that I think that are so important. One other thing about Mr. Marion Dial, I think that it's really important for people to understand. 70 years ago, this year, was the groundbreaking decision of Brown versus the Board of Education. Marion Dial was instrumental in making sure that school desegregation happened in a way that was good for everyone involved. And so I just think it's very important that we honor and look at these folks for what they went through at that time, what they were dealing with at that time. We can look back in history and it seems like so simple, but they had real roadblocks in front of them, and for all of the things that they were able to do through that.
And Joplin did it rather peacefully. He worked with Roy Wood, apparently, the superintendent of the Joplin schools at that time. And I mean, we should have been a shining example of how to do it.
Yes. And you know, and Mr. Dial had recently been, he was elected to be on the city council as well. So he had a long history of just really being very much involved and in touch with the Joplin community.
A great community servant.
Yes.
Thank you, Nana Nunley, for sharing this history.
Thank you.
When we come back, we delve into more of the Carver Monument history with the park ranger and how the National Park is actively sharing the distinguished scientists' discoveries and philosophies with area children and tourists.
Hello from the studios of KGCS TV. I'm Lydia Carlson, a communications major here at Missouri Southern. We're making lots of changes to modernize the TV station and bring you better quality video and content. But we need your help. We want to find out how you watch KGCS and what you like to watch. So we'd like you to take a quick questionnaire. It's as simple as holding your phone over the QR code on your screen. That code takes you to a link where you will see a short survey. If QR codes aren't for you, find a link to the survey on our Facebook page. Thanks for watching KGCS TV.
Welcome back to Newsmakers, where we are celebrating Black history. We just learned about some of the individuals who had a passion for recognizing George Washington Carver and making his birthplace a national monument. Joining us to continue that conversation is Curtis Gregory, a park ranger with the National Park Service at the George Washington Carver National Monument. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
How important were individuals like Melissa Cuther and Marion Dial, who locally advocated for the park?
I think it was very important because the park was going to be a part of the National Park Service, and so it's always important to have locals to buy in, and especially the black community, and they really gave it their all by helping with the establishment of the park.
Yeah, Cuther was behind what they ended up calling the Carver Nursery in Joplin, and which was a daycare, an integrated daycare. They even said there was going to be a little museum there. Was that kind of a precursor to the museum at the park? I mean, what kinds of things would have been there?
Yeah, I think it pretty much so was. Before the park was established in 1943, which didn't open until 1953.
Wow.
Joplin area had all sorts of like little Carver Day celebrations, and the Cuther's daycare, what have you, and it was known as the George Washington Carver Daycare, and like a lot of little things, Carver Day celebrations and things before the park was established. So the Carver Day events, they would have parades and banquets and all sorts of things, like 1949, 1950.
That's amazing.
It is amazing, yeah.
And we have an article that mentions that like 2,000 people were at the dedication of the George Washington Carver National Monument. In today's thing, that's a lot of people, right? I mean, for any dedication, it would seem like a lot, but that seems like it was a tremendous turnout. It
was a big turnout in Diamond. In Diamond, it was a big turnout. Like you were saying, it was like 2,000 people from all over the country came. It was a big deal. It was a morning celebration and an afternoon celebration. And Melissa Cuther, she was one of the speakers for that event. And we believe that she was the only woman that was a speaker for the Carver Day dedication ceremony.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah,
I know there was a representative, the governor of Oklahoma, which I thought was interesting.
Sure, yeah. They had so many people. The
Tuskegee Institute
The
folks were
Tuskegee
there?
was involved,
Yeah.
right? We're trying to get that out. The Department of the Interior, Secretary of the Interior was there. So it was a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Why was this park and that event so significant for that time period? I mean, based on the year itself.
You know, it was so significant because within the National Park Service, it was the first park dedicated to an African American in 1943. So it was a huge deal. It was a big deal, and people were so proud of it, and we still are today.
Yeah. It seems like a long time from 43 to 53 to get it all opened and established. But there's a lot there now. So
yes.
Let's talk about some of the things. You have a lot of offerings that can help educate about what George Washington Carver did. I mean, he was born a slave. It's pretty amazing how far he came in his life. Let's talk about that in a little bit.
So where we're at, you know, it's where Carver was born, enslaved, stayed there for about 12 years or so, journeyed for several years and made his way to Iowa, where he graduated from Iowa State University, first black, and then went to Tuskegee, Alabama, where he spent the rest of his life. And so the park is a 240-acre property with a visitor center, walking trail, 3 floors of exhibits, all on the life of George Washington Carver. So we just don't, we tell the childhood years, but we memorialize and tell his whole life story. So we offer education programs. Tons of school kids come there every year, which is great. And it's all learning about this wonderful man who never gave up.
A lot of those things are experiments that the kids, a lot of hands-on learning.
Yes.
Why is it important to offer that? Can make it real?
It's very important so the kids can, so kids or adults as well can experience some of the things that George worked on and that maybe they can also tell others about as well.
So we often hear about him being a scientist, but he also was kind of an artist too, right?
Oh yeah, he was an artist. As a matter of fact, he learned to be, well, he started his artwork or dabbled when he was a kid on the Moses Carver farm, where he learned about painting with natural dyes. Never gave up that love and painted for the rest of his life.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, he was born into slavery, but you know, what is the message about his life that you hope that kids take away, that adults take away? I mean, the impression that they get about how he was able to achieve.
Yeah, well, you know, we want visitors, especially kids, to, you know, take away that this kid that was born enslaved never gave up and always had an I can attitude. So that's what we try to instill at the park, especially on kids as well as adults, of this wonderful story.
Let's talk about his influence on our community. Why is it, I mean, you get a lot of visitors every year, don't you, at the monument?
Yeah, we get probably about 30,000 visitors from all over the country and parts of the world as well.
So it's a big place.
It is, and you know, a lot of our visitors, a lot of the visitors know about George Washington Carver, but a lot of our visitors, they'll see the brown sign, and they were like, "Well, why are you guys here? I thought Carver was in Alabama or the South." Well, a lot of visitors aren't aware that he was a Missourian.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this information, Curtis Gregory.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
That concludes today's program, where we learned Black history is also Joplin area history. Thanks to our guests for bringing us this valuable information, and thank you for watching Newsmakers.